everyone, I'm Clue. Welcome to another Melody lesson. So previously we've talked about copper economics, right? Liquidating your copper, spending it at the right time, the correct sequences to make use of copper. And then we also touched on the defensive elements that you can throw into Melody to make the deck a little bit more competitive viable. But what I want to talk about today is consistency. So consistency is probably one of the big hurdles for Melody that everyone has brought up, right? How is the combo consistent, right? How many turns does it actually take to generate enough copper to do enough damage? All these arguments that I want to show is not the case, right? And another thing that I really want to make note of is I'm doing all of this off of two cards revealed for Melody, Final Act and Encore. And Encore itself is basically just another representation of Final Act, right? So depending on what actually else is in Melody's box, this combo can just get greater and greater. And even if there's nothing in there, even if all the cards left are just, fancy ways to inspire your opponents and have fun in UPF, that's fine, right? Because I still have solid arguments for the combo. And then we also have the crank factor, because if items become viable for Melody, if crank is more than just mechanologist, then cash out also increases in power, and the amount of silver you can generate more easily than copper then allows you to extend the Final Act combo even further. Now, there's one other elephant in the room, right? I hate putting it here, the Fabtcg Spring Tunic, right? Because I want this deck to more or less be a cheap, accessible, stylized deck. Obviously, Crown and Dominion isn't so cheap, but having both that and the Spring Tunic is not a happy thing. But I can't argue with the consistency of the Spring Tunic, because for the previous two videos, we've talked about the Blossom of Spring, right? And its power in generating one resource to then allow you to play one extra copper. So the fact that the Fabtcg Spring Tunic does exactly that, but then still remains on the board for you to cash out, makes it far superior. Okay, so in terms of consistency, it is by far the best consistent slot to run. Otherwise, just taking something defensive like the Enel Rune that you can still cash in. Because again, the combo that we're going to go through today isn't so dependent on that one extra resource. So you don't necessarily need to run the Fabtcg Spring Tunic, but it does help you recover if, say, your gold token gets destroyed, because then you still have the one resource to pair with one card to pitch to still play a copper token. Now, in terms of the actual sequence, as you can see here, I've got 1 gold, 4 silver, and 1 copper, right? So this current setup is making use of 1 copper. You're pitching 7 cards, meaning that each Final Act is doing 15 damage, or in total, we're pressuring 30 damage in 1 turn. And the fact that it's just 1 copper, right? And this is the starting point, the basis, the most consistent form of the sequence that you can just get done. You can check off the majority of things by turn 1, right? Because with 1 copper, that's either play Jinglewood for 3 or play a song. Either of those two actions gets your copper, right? If you're just going off of songs, then you don't even need to run Jinglewood. You could run the Arcane Lantern for Arcane Barrier, you could run Talishare to push some more damage, or you can run the Ornate Tenson. Now, personally, I wouldn't run the Tenson because then you can't cash it out because its effect does destroy it, whereas Talishare you can swing twice and just leave it on board and don't get the final Rust token, and the Arcane Lantern stays around until you do cash it out. Right, so here is the applicable board state, if you will, right? The only thing apparent is 1 gold, 1 copper, right? Everything else doesn't have to be triggered until the turn you actually play, which means that your silver tokens are protected, right? Because now, instead of playing around pitching 2 cards, we're playing around pitching 1 card and having cash out in our hand with the other combo pieces, meaning that you do have to wait till you find all 3, so Final Act or Encore, and cash out, as well as 1 blue pitchable, but it also means that everything can be done in the 1 round, and there's no prior setup, again, other than that copper token, but generating 1 singular copper token is super easy with Melody. I've also just stuck with the Enel Rune gear and Jinglewood. Now, basically, all we have to do is start off by playing cash out, right? So we play cash out. It allows us to generate silver off of our equipment, so the crown, the Enel Rune robes, the gloves, and Jinglewood. So we have now 4 silver, 1 gold, 1 copper. We get go again because cash out has go again, and then we can move into our actual sequence. So starting off, we can play the gold like usual, pitch 1, draw 1, we have 1 resource floating, meaning that we can now play the copper off of that 1 floating resource. So pitch 1, draw 1, still neutral draw, and then we can play all the silver. So 4 silver nets us 4 more on the pitch zone. So pitch, draw, pitch, draw, pitch, draw, pitch, draw. Okay, and then we can go into our combo. So Final Act, then either Encore or another Final Act off of the Fleetfoot Sandals. Pitching 1 to play them, right? Final Act costs 1 into either Encore, which costs 1 as well, or Final Act, which costs 1 for a total of 3. Either setup, so 2 if you're just playing 2 Final Acts, or 3 if you have to chain in an Encore, meaning that, again, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cards pitched, meaning that each final act is doing 15 damage, and we're pressuring for 30 damage, right? You just find encore, final act, and cash out, and then you can play in one singular turn the whole sequence, meaning that, again, the setup being just start the game with the crown for your gold and generate 1 copper anytime, right? Just off of the first round you play, just use Jinglewood, just play a song, and you're good to go. Now it's just about finding the right cards. There are some alternative ways to also run the combo. So option B, we're running the Fairytale Spring Tunic now, and what this allows you to do, right? If you wait the 3 turns to get its counter to be able to proc it for its resource, you can now chain in 1 extra copper, right? So our sequence now gets 1 copper longer, 1 pitch longer, meaning that we're able to pressure that little bit more damage, which might secure the KO. Right, so starting off, simplest thing to do is proc the Tunic, get the 1 extra resource, and play 1 copper. So we play copper, we have 1 floating resource from the Tunic, we pitch 1, draw 1. We then can go into the normal sequence, so gold into copper. So pitching 2, draw off the gold, then pitch for the copper. Again, floating the resources from the gold. We pitch 3, cost 2, floating 1, making the second copper now neutral. Then you can go into cash out. So we play cash out, we generate our 4 silver. We can cash in the Tunic and not worry about it because we've already procced its effect. We can then play each of the silver. So 4 silver gets us 4 more resources. 2, 3, 4. And then you can go into the combo. So final act into, again, encore, into another final act, or final act, final act. Again, paying 1 to pay for the sequence. So now our combo is 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, meaning that each final act is now doing 17 damage, or we're pressuring for 34 damage by simply adding in the Spring Tunic and going for 1 extra copper, which still, in my books, 2 copper is not a hurdle whatsoever for Melody. Again, turn 1, play Jinglewood, play a song, done. Go first, have the copper set up, and then just fish for the cards, play the combo. The other important thing to note is, while we're playing cash out from the hand, what this means is you can have played cash out earlier, generated the 4 silver, and then any subsequent turn where you're actually going for the combo, you now have the previous turn or your opponent's turn to play something from the arsenal and play something for your hand, because in hand all you need is, again, final act, encore, or another final act, and then in this scenario 1 other pitchable because you've already played the cash out, right? So you only have to keep 3 cards in hand. Again, in terms of consistency, allowing you to survive that little bit longer by, again, playing something from the arsenal or using 1 card in your hand to block and mitigate a little bit of damage, leading into your turn where you swing back for, again, in this scenario with the Fairytale Spring Tunic, 34 off of 2 copper, or without the Tunic, 30 off of 1 copper. So lastly, how can we make drawing more consistent, right? Finding all the pieces for the combo. Because as we've laid out, right, for this current setup, all we need is 2 copper. And these 2 copper can be accomplished solely through Jinglewood. So if you really want, right, you don't have to run any songs, okay? Although in saying that, right, Jinglewood is very double-edged. Giving your opponent the option to make quicken tokens is quite detrimental, right? More so than whatever Vigor will do, and especially more than just giving them a +1 to their damage, right? Giving them the ability to chain something that wouldn't normally be able to be chained is really, really dangerous. So in that sense, I kind of like going for songs over Jinglewood, but you can just use Jinglewood to generate the 2 copper for the combo, 3 copper if you want to bump it up just a little bit, and just cut out the songs. Aside from that, right, we also have other ways to thin out the deck. Gorgonian Tome is always just a -1 because it's a neutral draw whenever you find it. So straight away from that, our deck is now down to 39. It's easier to pull some cards, right? The combo pieces themselves, again, cash out 1 card, encore most likely 1 copy, final act 2, right? So 4 pieces, 5. If you want to make them sort of easier to find, you could run 2 of the cash out. Again, it being blue means it doesn't affect the combo, doesn't mess anything up. The encore is where it gets a bit dangerous, but you can also cycle encore into one of the Bard songs if you're running them, right, to still get the blue in hand. It'll just cost you that 1 resource, right? But if you're running something like the Fairytale Spring Tunic, you can make up for that. The other cards you can add in, down here, we've got Sift. Now, any variation of Sift, I think I'd be happy to run, right? The red, yellow, or blue, even though it messes with our pitch. The reason for that is all of them can be used to thin out your deck. You draw 1, you play it, and it's done, right? You're sifting and you're looking for all the copies and getting them out of your deck before anything else, right? So you draw into a red Sift, play it, look for another Sift, play it, look for another Sift, play it, and that's your turn, basically. And, you know, I'd be fine with that, right? Just stalling out, just thinning out my deck, just getting the setup going and making it really consistent to draw into what I actually want and need. Or vice versa, you can use Sift to find the combo pieces and then hold on to them, right? Go for your copper first, then you Sift, find a few pieces, and then just go from there, right? Just play out the combo. In that scenario, though, I can see the red and yellow bogging things down, so maybe just run the blue. Same can be said for Fate Foreseen, right? You can use it as defense reaction. So unlike Sift, it does require that you play it on your opponent's turn, and when they attack, you can overblock with it if you want, right? If you just want to burn cards, but it also has opt, meaning that again, you can look at your deck and you can start to stack it in the way you might want it. Same can be said for Sync Blow, where you have the option to put something from your hand on the bottom, right? If you know it's a blue that's just going into your combo pile, right? For the eventual just cycling through cards, you can stick it at the bottom, count to 10, or it's just there solely as a defense reaction to ward against your opponent. Again, for both these, I would be somewhat okay with running all the color variations, right? That would be 18 cards in total of your deck, plus the 10 songs, it's 28, plus the combo pieces, that's 32, right? So then you just run 8 other cards, minus the Golgarian Tome, so you're running 7 other cards. You could chuck in this Rounds on Me at that point. This Rounds on Me is probably just super strong. You can use it in your turn prior to sort of fill out your hand, right? Stick in your arsenal, play it off the Spring Tunic, get 5 in your hand, just wait. You have some more cards then to block against your opponent to then still go into your combo off of just having 3 cards. So there are definitely ways to set up and play defensively against your opponent. And again, the whole big objective is A, cut out as much copper as possible, and then B, be able to play the combo string with the least amount of cards in hand, which most likely is going to be 3. I can't see any way of going for it without having 3 unless you're going for a single final act, which would be a lot easier to get off because then you don't have to search for the cards, right? You're just looking for final act and then your blue pitch pulls, but you do have to get that stack so much higher that I think that makes it inconsistent compared to actually looking for final act and then another final act or an encore. But you could, in all honesty, play the long game, right? Actually go for a huge stack of copper, right? Every 3 is going to cost you 4 cards. So eventually you will run out of cards. If you have the initial hand of 4 and you're just using 1 final act as your combo piece, then you can run through 3 chains of copper. So you can have 9 copper plus your gold and extra copper, and then however much silver you generate to try and do max damage. Or again, right? In all honesty, the easiest thing to do is probably split up and go for 2 final acts. Now, in saying that, I do have 1 setup left, and it'll probably be sort of a dual setup, right? It's going to be an FTK, right? But when I say FTK, it is literally, you get the cards, you go for it. You don't get the cards, you're kind of screwed, right? Well, I mean, you could probably fall back into the normal playstyle, right? Which is somewhat useful. And then the other sort of iteration of it will probably be a copperless go, right? Where you don't need to generate any copper, you don't have to play Melody as Melody, you're literally just using her as a bard, so you can stick in Final Act until, of course, we see what other cards she has. I will try and maybe also cut out the gold, I think, right? If I can get that done, then there's nothing on board, and the combo is all self-included, meaning that just like this setup, we're just going for the silver on the turn we're actually playing the combo, and not leaving anything on the board for your opponent to then mess up, right? We say mischievous meeps where they can steal one of the tokens, or any other form of item removal, which I'm sure we're going to get more of, seeing the smashing performance from Bruce. Did I get the card name right? Anyway, we'll leave it there, okay? So we've, again, gone over the economics of copper, right? I've had a nice helpful diagram of all the ways to spend copper effectively in terms of draw, neutral, minus, and going positive. Then we talked a little bit about defensive play, right? Swapping out equipment, going just defensive, stall, right? Using cards to just lessen damage while you fish for the combo pieces and get the setup done. Then, of course, we've gone through today's consistent version, right? Again, just going for 1 or 2 copper, playing with 3 cards from hand instead of all 4. And then, yeah, lastly, we'll go over the final iteration that I've come up with for now, and we'll wait for the actual release of the round table, where I can get my hands on the deck, pull it apart, and retune it. Hope you enjoyed. See ya.